What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another Armchair Fantasy Football live stream. My name is Corey. I am here to help you out-research your opponent in the 2024 season and beyond, and specifically for the next about 2 hours here in Week 3. Please pay attention to those fantasy guidelines, the cheat sheet, if you will, on the right side of your screen. We have availability, looking for players who are on the field, opportunity, players who are getting snaps, touches, and targets, productivity. That's going to be players who are efficient in their respective categories, depending on what positions they play. So that is, of course, yards per carry on the ground, yards per reception for those receivers and tight ends. And then for quarterbacks, pretty straightforward. Same thing with defenses and kickers as well. Don't pay too much attention to those, because with those, we usually use our fourth rule of thumb, that is opponent strength. We want to capitalize on opponents that are not doing very well. So, for example, Brock Bowers against the Panthers. I like that one a lot this week. Let's just kind of go through the recent news that we have on our wonderful Underdog app here. And, of course, if you guys are new, make sure you like and subscribe. We are here to help you out research that fantasy opponent here in 2024. CJ Gardner-Johnson, optimistic to suit up. Kind of just looking at things that would impact fantasy directly here. Obviously, he is a part of that Eagles defense, but that doesn't impact a whole lot of people. Bryce Young expected to start again. So I've seen a couple different things with Bryce Young. I've seen Bryce Young is going to possibly get traded. They're fielding offers for him in Carolina. I've seen Bryce Young is going to be out for a prolonged period of time. And now I'm seeing Bryce Young expected to start again in 2024. Just not sure how much the Red Rifle will be in there for. We do know that Andy Dalton gets the ball to start today. Nick Bosa likely to play through a rib issue. Greg Dortch should play through a hamstring issue. Justin Herbert, game time call. It looks like he's going to go. That could obviously impact a lot of things if he doesn't play. I believe Easton Stick is still his backup. I want to make sure on that before I say it, but I already said it. Yeah, Easton Stick. And then Taylor Heineke is actually the 3, which is shocking to me. Joshua Palmer is questionable as well. So just something to keep an eye on with that passing game. I would assume game time decisions for the most part in a game like this, where they're trying to start out 3-0 and kind of lead that division. That's an important thing to look at. We keep going down here. Michael Pittman Jr. expected to suit up today. That's a pretty big one. Now, if I were to be doing rankings, I'm not too high on Michael Pittman Jr. in this game specifically. He is going up against a very tough secondary in the Chicago Bears. You're talking Tyreek Stevenson, Jalen Johnson likely shadowing the wide receiver 1 on the Colts. It really depends. It's kind of, are they going to shadow? Are they going to stick to one side? And the intangibles with that. So Malik Willis likely getting the start again. I said this a day ago. I think I said this 2 days ago as well. I have no clue why the Packers would do anything other than this. The worst case scenario, if they sit Jordan Love, is they lose this game to the Titans. They start the season out 1-2, and they get themselves into not really even close to as big of a hole as they had themselves in last year. They were 2-5 last year at one point. Then they were 3-6, and Jordan Love helped them run the table the last handful of games. They're going to sit him. He's the second highest paid quarterback in NFL history behind Dak Prescott now. There is no reason to play him this early in the season when he had an MCL sprain. I have no doubts, no qualms. Now the question you might be asking yourself if you have Jordan Love, okay, what do? I need a backup plan. Baker Mayfield's stock has shot up. I was saying that before Week 1 started, that I felt like he was in a really good spot with one of the most consistent 1-2 punches in the league in Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Now, lo and behold, he is the QB1. Jared Goff's value has shot up as well. Stafford going up against a tough defense, but will likely be working from behind. That might be somebody you take a flyer on. Just understand turnovers may happen. He doesn't have Cooper Kupp. He does not have Puka Nacua. We have Edward Zhang in the chat. Yo, good morning, fellas. How's it going, Edward? Hope you're doing well. Start 1, full PPR. We have Deontay Johnson, T. Higgins, Whittington, and Javonte Williams. Full PPR, I'm typically looking for those traditional pass catchers. Let's just kind of look at the situation here. If we look at Deontay Johnson, obviously the Red Rifle is thrown to him, so it's kind of a tough tell on who Andy Dalton's favorite is going to be. What we do know is Deontay Johnson has not looked great. He's only had 6 opportunities per game. He's only capitalized on 5 of 11 through 2 weeks. No touchdowns, not a whole lot of looks in the red zone. We do know that the Panthers are 5.5-point underdogs, meaning that maybe they go throw heavy in the back end of the game. There aren't supposed to be a lot of points scored in that game, so you kind of need him to get involved early. Now, T. Higgins joins a wide receiving core that includes Ja'Marr Chase and a receiving core in general that includes Gesicki. He's good to go after nursing a hamstring injury the first couple of weeks, going up against a Washington squad in prime time that has given up a decent amount of points. If we look at what the Commanders have given up so far, they've given up 37 and then 18 to the Giants. Don't be deceived. The Giants did score 3 touchdowns. They just didn't kick or convert on a single PAT. We're looking at a team that's allowing about 350 yards in total. They are ranked last by these fantasy metrics and in a variety of metrics. The Commanders have not had a good defense in a while. Trading away their key pieces. Montez Sweat no longer there. So I really like the T. Higgins matchup against a pretty vulnerable opponent. We're looking at number 4 on our guidelines on the right side of the screen. I think T. Higgins can capitalize here. Whittington, not the biggest fan. I think we need to see more. And then for Javonte Williams, I've never really been super impressed. Not the most efficient in the world. Not on a good football team. And Javonte Williams is in a dangerous spot, right? He is on a team that is 6.5, 7-point underdogs this week in the Broncos, meaning they're likely going to go pass heavy. Now, if he gets involved as a pass catcher, that's another story, but he has not been efficient on the ground. I'm all of a sudden looking at the depth chart. I'm looking at Samaje Perine. I'm looking at the guys behind him, thinking maybe, just maybe. I mean, he has quite literally, from a yards per carry perspective, gotten worse each and every year. So I'm swerving Javonte Williams, Edward. I'm not sold on Whittington quite yet. I'm between Deontay Johnson and T. Higgins. Deontay hasn't looked great. T. Higgins is going up against a weak defense. You just have to hope, again, with the Bengals being favored by a touchdown, that he is a part of that offense early and often before they go run heavy in the latter stages. That's kind of what we have to pull for here. Otherwise, I think you're in a good spot with T. Deontay would be my second choice. Then between Whittington and Javonte, I guess we'd go Whittington and then Javonte after him. Chaka says, hey, I have to start 2 in PPR. We are between Malik Nabers, Amari Cooper, Zach Moss, and Deontay Johnson. Who would you go with? And then at quarterback, would you go with Carr, Purdy, or Goff? Okay, let's answer the first part of your question first, Chaka. You have to start 2 in PPR between Nabers, Amari Cooper, Zach Moss, and Deontay. So we have 3 traditional pass catchers in a PPR format and 1 running back in Zach Moss. All right. We'll go to Malik first, and we're actually going to look. We're going to look at, not the Titans. Target share. Using Fantasy SP is a very good tool. Just trying to figure out how big of a role does this individual really play on their respective offense. The answer for Malik Nabers would be a huge one. 25 targets. He had 18 targets in the second week. Has the most snaps of any pass catcher. Has the most receptions. It's only a 60% catch rate, but he's pacing nearly 100 receiving yards per game through 2 games. Does have a score. Wandale looked like the primary in week 1, but I think long-term, an early first-rounder is going to garner a lot of attention in Malik Nabers. So I really like Malik Nabers. Obviously, the offense of the Giants is not very good, but you can also rely on the fact that they will be working from behind a decent amount. So there is that. All right. Amari Cooper, Zach Moss. We'll go over and look at Nabers up against a tough Cleveland defense. His projection actually up a little bit over 11 coming off that monstrous performance where he had 10 receptions out of 18 targets and a touchdown. We see somebody who is on the field for pretty much every snap so far. He is obviously a pivotal part of this offense. I like Malik Nabers a lot. Again, a wide receiver 1 on a bad football team can have benefit as long as the offense is humming. Now, the offense did have 3 touchdowns. So Nabers, pretty high on my list. I would like to think we're going to take Nabers over Moss. So we just got to strike down one more between Amari and Deontay. We already talked about Deontay, but we'll go back to him in a second. Amari Cooper against those very Giants. Again, I would expect this to be a run-heavy team today. I would expect Jerome Ford to get the ball a lot in the second half, considering the Browns are favored Not by a ton, but by a decent amount over a Giants squad that very well could win only 3 or 4 games this year. They look pretty horrible. I know they invested in Brian Burns. I know they invested in Dexter Lawrence. And obviously they went after Malik Neighbors. I would say we're taking Neighbors over Cooper. They're in the same game off of game script alone, right? One of these guys is going to be in a run-heavy offense in the second half, and I have a pretty hard time believing it is going to be the Giants. I think it's the Browns. I'm a big Jerome Ford buyer for this week. I think he'll go off. I think he'll have a lot of involvement in the second half of a game that the Browns should win. It's at home as well. Not that that matters too much. The Giants have just been a poor team so far. So I'm taking Neighbors over Amari. I'm taking Neighbors over Moss. I'm taking Amari over Moss. So Chaka, now I'm asking myself, am I going Amari Cooper or Deontay Johnson? Deontay Johnson with likely a better quarterback situation brewing on his team at the moment. It's still a Panthers team that doesn't look great, but they're likely going to have to go throw heavy working from behind against Gardner Minshew and the Raiders. And Zach Moss, a running back that does not have the backfield on a stranglehold. Got some more touches and snaps than his counterpart in Chase Brown in week 2. But again, we need a running back that catches a lot of passes in a full PPR format for me to be convinced. So I'm going Neighbors, and then it's between Amari and Deontay. I want to lean Deontay, but we haven't seen much out of him, and it's a brand new quarterback. I do think they work from behind as opposed to Amari Cooper. They should be working ahead. So if we're going off of game script alone, I think I'm going Neighbors and Deontay. 2 wide receivers and not great offenses. Neighbors and Amari, I wouldn't be mad at you either. But we're going to leave Zach Moss out of this one. He does not fit into that very specific category of running backs that would make sense in this scenario in a PPR format. If you guys are just joining the stream, my name is Corey. This is Armchair Fantasy Football. We are helping you out-research your opponents. In week 3, we're answering start or sit questions, trade questions, really everything in between. All right, so we're going to go Neighbors and Deontay or Neighbors and Amari. I'm leaning Deontay. Chaka also saying, who would you go with the quarterback? We have Carr, Purdy, or Goff. All pretty solid options. The thing you have to be careful with Purdy is, 1, they run the ball so much in San Fran, and 2, they're favored a lot, so they have to run the ball. Going up against a bruised-up Rams team, it makes a lot of sense to say that the Niners should win this one by a landslide, considering Puka Nacua and considering Cooper Kupp are not in there. I expect the Niners, after being beat up pretty bad by the Vikings last week, to steamroll this squad. And as a result, I don't know if Purdy has to throw the ball 36 times like he did last week. All right, so we have Purdy. We've got Goff going up against the Cardinals. Threw the ball 55 times in a close one against the Buccaneers last week. Some people are saying that this team didn't look great. Goff didn't look great. A couple of picks. I think he's a good buy low here. Arizona's had some promise on offense. Marvin Harrison Jr. really broke out in week 2 after everybody was worried about the fact he was wide open and wasn't getting any targets in week 1. I feel a lot better about this situation now. And for the Lions, I think regardless, you're going to get a decent amount of productivity with Goff. They are favored, so maybe they go run heavy, and Dan Campbell loves to run the ball. You're not going to get a conservative offense. That's for sure. Carr against Philly. Now, Derek Carr has thrown the ball 39 times this year, and he's QB3. He has 5 passing touchdowns to just 1 pick. Actually has a rushing touchdown as well, so that helps him. Going up against a Philly squad that has allowed 51 points through 2 weeks. They do have a forced fumble. They have a pick. Didn't cause any turnovers against Atlanta. Lost in primetime because of that arm punt from Jalen Hurts. And they're allowing around 400 yards per game. I think I have my answer here because Philly and New Orleans is a pretty close spread. I think that'll be a competitive ball game through and through, much more so than the other ones. And I am thinking that if anyone's going to be working from behind between Purdy going up against a bruised-up Rams team, Goff going up against a Cardinals team that I think is exciting but still relatively unproven, and Carr going up against an Eagles squad that's hungry and still very strong and is allowing 400 yards a game. Chaka, I'm sorry that was a very long answer. I wanted to be thorough and do you justice here. I think I'm going Derek Carr in this matchup. I think we actually see him throw the ball 25, 30, maybe even 35 times this game because there's a chance that the Eagles take down or at least keep it competitive with the Saints, and I like those odds a lot better than the other two matchups. Elijah's in here. How's it going, Elijah? We have JSN or Eckler or McLaurin or Shaheed at flex. All right. Jackson Smith-Njigba actually has a pretty tough matchup. We can look at his involvement. He had a phenomenal week 2. The Miami Dolphins secondary has looked nice so far. I will be honest. 16 targets, 12 receptions, 117 through the air. That's just a dream when you've got a guy getting 4 targets every quarter and you can just rely on the fact that he's going to get volume. I was saying this going into the year, and it's not like a huge hot take, but I believe that Jackson Smith-Njigba is easily taking over as the wide receiver 2 on this team this year. I think there are games where he's the wide receiver 1. Obviously, the last game being a prime example. Tyler Lockett is taking care of his body, but he is well over 30 now. I believe he's 32 years old. I'll check that here in a moment. He always has a very high catch rate, right? So he's 8 for 9 earlier on in this year. But Jackson Smith-Njigba is a first-round pick from a couple years ago, from last year, excuse me. This is somebody that the Seahawks spent a decent amount of draft capital on. He was very talented at Ohio State, had one of the best grades as an 18-year-old in college that we've seen. He was actually up there with that of Marvin Harrison Jr. in his prospect profile. And this is somebody with a huge catch radius who really caught fire the back half of last year and is coming off a monstrous game. Now, he does go against the Dolphins. You also brought up McLaurin. McLaurin going up against... Did I spell that wrong? Oh, McLaurin going up against the Bengals. Bengals squad that should be working ahead. They are 6.5-point favorites, according to Vegas, in prime time. McLaurin hasn't looked great. Jaden Daniels' bread and butter has been, in essence, checking it down and running a decent amount, kind of building that confidence. He has looked the best out of the 3 rookie quarterbacks, I guess 4 now with Drake May checking in. This is somebody who will be working from behind, but it's also somebody who was working from behind in week 1, and that didn't seem to matter. So we haven't seen a ton of volume. 8 targets was a significant improvement, but not much down the field for Terry McLaurin. I don't know if I love the overall situation that he's in right now. So we're between JSN, Eckler, McLaurin, and Shaheed. I'm taking JSN over McLaurin, even though McLaurin has a slightly better matchup in my opinion. Now we're between Eckler and Shaheed and JSN. Shaheed, I have said this before, I absolutely value versatility almost as much as my 4 core values on the right side here, right? I really like versatility. I think that you have a spot on a lot of different NFL teams to be in line for some volume if you are like that of Jaden Reed, if you are like that of a prime example, Deebo Samuel or Taysom Hill. Rashid Shaheed, it's just a tough read, right? That rhymed. Because Derek Carr has thrown the ball 26 times. This team has been out ahead, and they have relied on the run, and they've fed Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams a pretty decent amount. Now, it's a matchup against the Eagles this week, a pretty weak Eagles team. And again, Shaheed is very versatile, so I believe in him a little bit more. He's caught 7 to 9 passes for 2 touchdowns. Big play threat, right? He's doubling everybody up, including Chris Olave. Shaheed, I think, against an Eagles defense that's vulnerable in a game that should be close, checks off a lot of boxes for me. And then we go over to Austin Eckler. Look, Eckler definitely looks like he's lost a step. And this is a game where, I like to go off Vegas spreads because Vegas knows what they're doing here. They're doing a lot of research to develop those lines. Eckler is coming up on 30 years old. He does have pass catching upside. He's not getting a lot of touches. 6 touches in the first game, 4 through the air, and then 11 touches in the second. Obviously, still kind of fighting with Brian Robinson for some touches out of the backfield. Best left for PPR formats against Cincy. You're going to need to hope that down a score or two, Jaden Daniels decides he should either check it down or run it. And I don't see that happening. I think this team's going to have to go vertical if they do find themselves in a hole. Now, the Bengals aren't that strong in September, but I'm not very high on... I'm not very high on Eckler. So then we go over to Shaheed's got a nice matchup against a team that's allowing 400 yards per game. McLaurin has not been targeted a whole lot. Eckler is likely not going to be in a run-favorable game script. And Jackson Smith-Njigba is coming off a 16-target game, but has a tough matchup against Miami. Now, will Miami have the ball a whole lot? I'm not sure with Skylar Thompson back there. then you can flip it back over and say, well, the Seahawks are favored by 5 points. Maybe they go run heavy. I think Shaheed is my favorite, or JSN. Eckler and McLaurin, we're going to stay away from the Commanders this week. It's not a great situation for either of them. McLaurin over Eckler, I guess, for that third spot, because of the fact I expect this team to have to go throw heavy, but that's about all I have to say about that. All right. Chalk is saying, thank you, no problem. Afterburner, I think you're new here. Welcome aboard. Says Waddle or Shaheed for flex, half PPR. I am going to go Rashid Shaheed, excuse me. Rashid Shaheed is versatile. Rashid Shaheed is going to get a couple handoffs from time to time. Rashid Shaheed is going up against a weak defense that, again, is allowing 400 yards per game. Does he have any rushing yet? They're not showing that. They're just showing his return numbers. Well, maybe he houses one. But Shaheed's been a big play threat, and I believe this is the highest projection he has all year. Yeah. I think this is a competitive ball game where the Saints are going to be able to move the ball down the field. Weber State, how about that? As opposed to Waddle, who is working with Skylar Thompson. If we look at what Skylar Thompson has done in the past, and it is half PPR, so we need to rely more on volume. Those big plays, Shaheed is more prone to getting those right now, as opposed to Waddle with somebody like Thompson throwing to him. I mean, Skylar Thompson has 68 career completions, 8 in the last 2 calendar years. I am not very confident. And then they go after and get Tyler Huntley. And Huntley's got a little more success. He's still not somebody who's going to throw down the field. We're seeing a lot of rushing upside here. Skylar Thompson is still in line to start those. So maybe that's a developing story we look at. But I like Shaheed. I like the matchup. I like the versatility. And I just don't like the situation Waddle is in at the moment, unfortunately. Toast on Rye podcast. Oh, Ryan's in here. How's it going, Ryan? Make sure you listen to this guy. He helps you get results. I appreciate it, Ryan. If you're playing any fantasy football, let me know what questions you've got. Ryan's another one I have to say really helped me get to this spot. You know, we were on the stream yesterday thanking everybody under the sun for helping us get to 1,000 subscribers. He helped me get this channel off the ground. When it was All Sports Now, when it was Armchair Athletes, he was editing my stuff, giving me YouTube advice, optimization. A lot of what I apply now is because of Ryan, so huge shout out to you, man. Eric Johnson's in here saying start 2 between T. Higgins, Zach Charbonnet, and Drake London. Typically, in a PPR format, I am going with the 2 pass catchers. We can look at Drake London, who had a better day going up against Kansas City in prime time. Let's see. Also, I apologize. I did not eat breakfast, so we're down in a smoothie during this stream. Drake London looked better in week 2. More volume. Did have a score. Primetime Kirk didn't look great, but he also looked better. And, yeah, the end zone shot really saved him. I mean, in PPR, 11.4 isn't bad. And then we were choosing between Drake London and T. Higgins. Higgins going up against the Commanders, quite literally the worst defense in the league. We just need Higgins to be involved early for me to really be sold on the upcoming performance. So because of that, between Higgins and London, I know Charbonnet getting more and more usage because KW9 is down. You know what? You know what, Eric? Because the Seahawks have one of those matchups too, where they're favored by almost a touchdown against Miami. Charbonnet with a decent amount of pass catching upside too against Miami. Between him, London, and Higgins. Let's break this down, okay? So Higgins going up against quite literally the worst defense through a couple of weeks from a fantasy perspective in the Commanders. But they're likely going to be running the ball in the second half. So we're looking at Zach Moss and Chase Brown. But if he can get involved early and often, we're in a good spot. Drake London going toe-to-toe with a Chiefs team that I think will put up a lot of points. I think that has the highest total of the week. It might be over 50. And then Zach Charbonnet in a run-favorable script. You actually have 3 very good situations to be in. If we want to play it conservatively, maybe we go London and Charbonnet because Higgins is coming off the hamstring injury. How much involvement is he truly going to have? I'm not sure. My favorite out of these 3 is probably London toe-to-toe in that matchup. He got more involvement. We need primetime Kirk to show up. But I would say London, that is tough. London Charbonnet, maybe? Higgins could be in line for a great deal of a workload. It's just such a big unknown because he's coming off injury. I haven't seen anything about snap counts. So maybe we go London, Higgins, and then sit Charbonnet. But if we see anything about a snap count for Higgins, Eric, let's sit him. All right, hope that helped. Afterburner saying, I'm glad that was your conclusion. It's what I had done, but glad to have my choice backed up. Yeah, I like Shaheed a lot more, volume-wise and situation-wise. Juan Polito says full PPR. We have Shaheed, Waddle, Devontae Smith, Jonathan Taylor. Let me know how many we're choosing from. Otherwise, I am probably picking Jonathan Taylor or Shaheed or Devontae Smith. So we're definitely making sure that Jalen Waddle is last. Devontae Smith against, we're probably going to be lining up against Isaiah Terrell. Let's see. Let's look at target share here. And if you guys are just joining in, my name is Corey. This is Armchair Fantasy Football. We are helping you out-research your fantasy opponent as we skip into the main slate for Week 3. Our fantasy guidelines on the right side of your screen. We have availability. Are they healthy? Opportunity. We're looking at snaps, touches, and targets. Productivity. We want players who are efficient in their respective categories. So we're looking at high yards per carry. We're looking at pass catching upside for running backs, so on and so forth. And then opponent strength. We're already seeing a few, right? Like, we want to capitalize against the Commanders. The Commanders and the Eagles, for whatever reason, the NFC East, man, not looking too good. Commanders giving up about 350 yards a game and plenty of points. Same with the Eagles. So if you've got pass catchers who you think can get involved early and often, and if you've got running backs that you think will be on a team that are going to be out and ahead of a defense that's already been struggling and isn't forcing turnovers and is allowing the ball to be moved down the field, then we're in a pretty good spot, right? Okay, only one for one between Shaheed, Devontae Smith, and Jonathan Taylor. What was I looking up? Eagles target share. Obviously, we know A.J. Brown is down. Devontae Smith is far and away the favorite here. 14 receptions out of 18 targets. That's a nice high catch rate. Anything above 72, 73% I'm feeling pretty good about. 80 yards per game, a score. I think it's between him and Shaheed. Jonathan Taylor. I don't know if Jonathan Taylor is in a spot where he gets the ball a whole lot, because I do believe the Bears give this team a run for their money. The Colts have a horrible defense. They allowed Malik Willis and the Packers, who literally said, we're going to run the ball every single time, to just run it down their throat with effectiveness. And they kind of got cut up by C.J. Stroud in Week 1. I'm not sure how many touches Jonathan Taylor gets. And at least in a relatively small sample size, we have not seen a ton from him in the receiving game. So if I'm choosing one, I'll give you two choices here, Juan, but I am between Shaheed and Devonta Smith. I don't like the situation that Jalen Waddle is in, and I do not like the fact that Jonathan Taylor is likely going to be in a close game. I'm not sure how much they'll be able to hang their hat on the run. The Bears' defense is nasty. Their offense looked a little bit better against the Texans, and they have arguably their best matchup to date. I wouldn't even say arguably. The Titans and Texans, they're doing the AFC South tour. Titans and Texans have good defenses, but the Colts have looked horrible, and Shane Steichen's got a lot of fixing to do over there in general. So we're going to go with either Shaheed or Smith. Those two are actually in the same game. So Saints Eagles, we're gonna go after that one. Richard Ahmed says Aaron Jones or Calvin Ridley for PPR. Calvin Ridley going up against a tough Packers secondary. And if you guys are just joining, would greatly appreciate a like, and if you could hit that subscribe button. We are helping you out research your fantasy opponent in 2024. We are answering start and or sit questions. We are answering any trading questions for the future, waiver wire pickups last second, analyzing the matchups, and going pretty into depth, if I do say so myself. So would greatly appreciate a like there. We are almost at 5 already, just 30 minutes into the stream, and just hit 1,000 subscribers yesterday. So very appreciative of all of your support. Pay attention to those fantasy football guidelines on the right side of the screen. Availability, are they on the field? Opportunity, snaps, touches, and targets. Productivity, high yards per carry, high catch percentage. Overall involvement, what are they doing with that opportunity? And opponent strength. And we're diving into a lot of that here on one of my favorite sites in the world, Fantasy SP, where we can see somebody's involvement. All right, So we are between Aaron Jones and Calvin Ridley. Aaron Jones going up against the Texans front that did not allow the Bears to run the ball at all. Then again, it is the Bears who have a horrible offensive line. But we will look here. Yeah, and Calvin Ridley going up against that secondary. So we have Aaron Jones, who's going to need a decent amount of pass-catching involvement to really sell me. So let's look at what he's done so far there. And I promise I will get to all of your questions. That's the most important part. Make sure you ask me anything you have as we roll into the main slate of Week 3. So Aaron Jones, a decent amount of pass-catching involvement. This is a team that was in a spot to go very conservative against the Niners and really didn't give him the ball a whole lot. Whereas with Calvin Ridley, I mean, this pass game hasn't looked great in general. Will Levis has not looked great in general. Calvin Ridley, consistent in the involvement, had 4 receptions out of his 6 targets for 77 yards. Did have his first score of 2024. So we're looking at about 29 points. This is a half-point PPR format. And Aaron Jones, I'm just worried about the volume a little bit. 14, 16. I guess it's not that bad. I don't know. The Vikings have looked legit, too. In full PPR, I'm going to give the tiebreaker to the pass catcher and Calvin Ridley. I think... but Jones got more pass catching involvement last game. He has been efficient. I don't want to go against my own rules there. Jones ticks off more of the boxes, and he's going to have the ball in his hands more. So, Richard, we're going to hope that Aaron Jones gets 4 or 5 receptions again, and I think we'll be happy with our decision. Ray Gamer, that's a close one, though. Ray Gamer says, should I start the Raiders defense against the Panthers, the Chargers defense against the Steelers? I love streaming defenses, so I love that this is the thought process here. We're going to look through some different options day of. Buccaneers defense against the Broncos or Seahawks against the Dolphins. I am probably going with the last 2. I mean, you just named off 4 horrible offenses in the Panthers, Steelers, Broncos, and Dolphins, albeit the Steelers are 2-0. Broncos led by rookie quarterback Bo Nix, like the other rookie QBs, doesn't have a passing touchdown yet and has definitely struggled. The Dolphins don't have Tua. I wouldn't expect Skylar Thompson to just snap out of what we've seen in a handful of games throughout his career. I'm probably going Seahawks or Bucks. I think the Steelers have a really nice running game. The Panthers, a little scared that Andy Dalton's in there, a veteran quarterback that we haven't seen in a while. I'm kind of getting Joe Flacco vibes. Like, what if he just rattled off a couple wins for him? So I'm going either Buccaneers defense or Seahawks defense. Bo Nix is struggling. That offense looks abysmal. And the Dolphins don't have Tua. Skylar Thompson hasn't given us anything to ride home about yet. Eric Johnson says, thank you for the advice. I was thinking the same thing about the Higgins injury. Just would hate to see him get all those end zone targets. I know, I'm scared to risk it, but I don't see anything about a snap count. So then maybe we take him and drop the running back into your deal. Yeah, I know, it's tough. Stroop is in here saying, full PPR, do we start Montgomery or Zach Moss? And again, if you guys are just stopping in, my name is Corey. This is Armchair Fantasy Football. We are helping you out-research your fantasy opponent in 2024 and, of course, in Week 3. Drop any questions that you have in the live chat. Answering Stroop's question right now. Montgomery or Moss? Let's kind of go and look at overall involvement here because both of those guys are sharing the backfield. We'll go... Let's see here. And then Montgomery would be Lions. Target share. Let us see. So we're looking to see, on top of everything else, so we know the Lions are playing the Cardinals. They are favored. The Bengals are playing the Commanders. They are favored. Both run-heavy scripts, both situations that I like for these guys. The question is, who's getting more involvement? And kind of knew this answer already, but just wanted to see. Montgomery has 33 touches to Jahmyr Gibbs' 35. Montgomery is not on the field nearly as much. He's more of their power back. He does get the ball in those goal-to-go situations like every single time. Dan Campbell is not one for subtlety. When they are in a situation, talking about the Lions, where they need a yard, or they need to score, or they need to punch the ball in, David Montgomery is getting the ball every single time, as opposed to Jahmyr Gibbs, unless they really try and get cute with it, which he doesn't do. 33 touches, 4.5 yards a carry, 2 scores on the ground. 24 touches, 3.5 yards a carry, a score on the ground. And Chase Brown, in a small sample size, has been more efficient, has been relatively involved in the passing game. They have the same amount of receptions. Chase Brown's just not down the field. This is a Detroit offense that in general commits to the run a lot more than the Bengals have early on. Granted, the Bengals haven't looked great. They are 0-2 to start out. And maybe we get shocked and we have a competitive ball game on our hands. I do think both teams are going to lean on the run more. I'm going to go after someone who is far more efficient in David Montgomery by about a yard per carry, who gets more involvement, is going to have a good game script today if the Lions can pull this off against a Cardinals team that I think is going to cool off a little bit this week and gets plenty of opportunity in the red zone too. So Montgomery over Moss, and I feel pretty confident about that, Stroop. Hope that helped. Max says, do I start Ray McCloud or DeAndre Hopkins? So Hopkins, like the secondary guy on the Titans now, behind Calvin Ridley based off of their usage. PPR league. Okay, thank you. Ray McCloud competing with Drake London, competing with Darnell Mooney, competing with Kyle Pitts. How much are they competing with one another for targets, you may ask? Let's find out. So answering Max's question here now. We are 1 like away from 5 in the stream. Would greatly appreciate it, folks. I see we've got about 8 of you watching. Welcome to the channel. This is Armchair Fantasy Football. We are live streaming about 4 to 5 times a week, sometimes more when news breaks. And we are helping you out-research your fantasy opponent in 2024. Ray actually leads the Falcons. Interesting. In targets early on. Not on the field as much, but that's pretty subtle. He is on the field less than Mooney, London, and Pitts. Low catch rate, no touchdowns yet. Not a whole lot down the field. So Ray McCloud or DeAndre Hopkins. We'll look at DeAndre's just overall performance so far. All right, so Ray's got 7 for 94 through a pair of weeks. Hopkins going up against a tough Green Bay secondary, and Hopkins has little to no involvement. He is hardly on the field. Very tough matchup. We're going to go Ray McCloud. I never thought I'd say that, but DeAndre's 32. Don't want to call him washed, but he doesn't look great so far. That is the route we're going to go, Max. Ray McCloud getting a decent amount of involvement. I would say that. Z Smitty says, experts say start London, but I'm leaning Amari Cooper because of the volume he gets against a horrible defense. I also have Bijan, and that's a lot of eggs in the Falcons basket. So you're between, I just want to make sure I'm not missing a prior comment here. You are between London and Amari. Okay, and you also have Bijan. So Drake London going up against the Chiefs in what will probably be an arms race, and Amari Cooper on that Browns team. Oh, that's a tough one because Cooper's had a tough start going up against the Giants. And yes, he's had a rocky start, but I do like your argument with the volume. He is on the field, snaps, touches, and targets, right? Snaps, he's been on the field for about 90% of them. Targets, 17, that's an 8.5 per game rate so far. Touches, it's kind of dependent on how many of those are catchable. That matchup, I think I agree with you. Well, both defenses have been pretty horrid so far. The Giants, they were kind of bend but don't break. They allowed, what was it, they allowed 7 field goal conversions against the Commanders last week and lost. But they're still allowing a decent amount of yards per game. I'm okay with you going with Amari there, Smitty. I think my argument for London would just be more success early on. It feels like Watson and Cooper and Watson in this past game haven't looked great in general. But if you want to go Amari in a pretty favorable matchup, you just got to hope he's involved early. And I like the targets argument too. He has 17 through 2 games. Tyler Owens is in here. Oh no. Says my lineup is destroyed. Jaylen Warren, Chuba, or Samaje. Okay, so Jaylen Warren, a decent amount of pass catching upside. Chuba Hubbard, almost never in a good situation when it comes to a team that's going to lean on the run because the Panthers are always losing. Let's just use productivity to kind of break the tie here. Although I'm telling you, this Panthers-Raiders game feels sneaky with Andy Dalton back there. It feels very sneaky. Chuba looked efficient. Chuba also had 4 receptions for 12 yards, so he did break the 10-point barrier. I think Samaje was another name you had. I want to make sure I'm right on that. Okay, and then Jaylen Warren as well. I'm leaning Warren, but I don't want to give you a blind guess here. Okay, so Samaje doesn't look very good at all. I know he's going to get more with Steele out there, and Samaje is the now RB2 with Isaiah Pacheco out. And then Jaylen Warren. I've been waiting for this guy to take over the backfield, and the Steelers just don't give him a lot of touches. But you cannot argue with the numbers. You cannot argue with the efficiency. He's just kind of in a frustrating spot where his team doesn't use him a ton. He is a career above 4.5 yards per carry player with a lot of pass catching involvement. I think I'm going to go with Jaylen Warren. I mean, yes, we just named off some some running back twos. Up to 5 likes. Thank you guys very much. Warren, the most efficient out of them, and Warren, in my opinion, right now, the most proven out of them. I'm between Warren and Chuba. I think that Jaylen Warren is on a team that maybe muscles out a win against the Chargers. I still think the Chargers win this game. I'm between Jaylen Warren and Chuba. No Samaje. Absolutely no to Samaje. I'll gladly be proven wrong, but I just want to go off track record here. Nolan says, would you start the Steelers defense or the Buffalo defense? Steelers against the Chargers. I mean, look, the Chargers aren't as flashy as they have been in the past. I know Justin Herbert's throwing for like 100 and something yards a game. They're very run heavy, but J.K. Dobbins has looked awesome. And that run game has looked awesome. You know, just because they're not lighting up the scoreboard doesn't mean they're not moving the ball. The Steelers have been a tough defense so far in general. And then what was our other option here? Steelers or Bills? Bills going up against Jacksonville. A Jags team that has struggled to move the ball despite the pieces they have. Oh, I mean, you've got 2 good defenses against 2 decent offenses. Ooh. Maybe we take the Steelers in a game that is supposed to be pretty ugly. I believe that has the lower total. So I think I'd give that the tiebreaker. Yeah. Up to 7 likes. Thank you guys so much. If we could get up to 10 in the first hour of this stream, that would be awesome. My name is Corey. This is Armchair Fantasy Football. Direct your attention to the right side of the screen for our 4 key fantasy guidelines. Availability, are they on the field? Opportunity, touches, snaps, and targets. We've been talking a lot about those today. Productivity, what are they doing with said opportunity? And opponent strength. All right, yeah, I think I am going to go with... I'm going to go with the Steelers defense. That should be a lower scoring game. I would say the Chargers, despite the fact they have been effective, they have less weapons, and they're less of a threat than the Jaguars right now. That'll be close. I think both have good games. They're solid defenses going up against okay offenses. Ray Gamer says, what wide receivers do you think I can trade for if I'm trading away Jordan Mason? I have so many running backs I can even trade away Waddle and Mason to get someone. Stroop says, thank you, no problem. Ray, if we're doing Waddle and Mason, we have to understand that Waddle took a significant hit in his value, obviously, with Skylar Thompson going out. What receivers? I don't want to go top 10. Top 15 to top 20 could be interesting all of a sudden. Now, Chris Godwin's very expensive. He's wide receiver 1 right now. But I have always loved Chris Godwin for his consistency. If he were to cool off in a couple weeks, maybe we go after him. 1 like away from 10 on the stream. I greatly appreciate it, guys. I mean, 4,000-yard seasons in the last 5 tries is pretty dang good. Maybe we go after Olave. Maybe we go after London. Actually, you know what? Let's try and get Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice should be in line for a lot more involvement with Hollywood Brown being out for the entirety of the year. Let's try and get Rashee Rice for, you said, Waddle and Mason. Mason's going to give somebody a reliable running back for the next few weeks until CMC, unfortunately, comes back for that Mason owner. And then for Waddle, they are essentially, by the time CMC comes back and takes Mason's spot, Waddle may have Tua back and then his value goes up. So you have one player where they get to play the long game and one that they get to ride out right now for immediate gratification. So if we're going Waddle and Mason, let's try and get a complete, I actually like that combo a lot. Let's try and get a complete receiver who is good for the foreseeable future in Rashee Rice. Kelsey looks older out there. No Hollywood Brown. I like Rashee Rice here. We are at 10 likes on the stream. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Let's try and get Rashee Rice. If we can't get Rashee Rice, I'll give you a couple options in this same tier here. Don't love DJ Moore with the target competition. Go Rashee Rice, Nico Collins, and Zay Flowers. I would go after Rashee Rice first, then Nico, then Zay. I think I like Rashee Rice more long-term, even though Nico Collins had an awesome start to the year. Ray Gamer says Buccaneers have 5 starters out on defense. That's the only thing I'm worried with them, but can still do good. And the Buccaneers are just going up against such a poor offense. I know they've got 5 starters out. Then I would take one of the other options, but the Broncos are just one of those teams through a couple of weeks that have gotten in their way so often, it's hard for me to not bet against them. Now, Forsyth is in here saying Rachaad White against Denver or Brian Jr. against Cincinnati. Half PPR. Okay. Let's look at this one. Brian Robinson Jr. So this is an interesting one, and I want to go back and look at touches, snaps, and targets with this one. Excuse me, just overall involvement, touches, and snaps. So Brian Robinson averaging 58% snaps per game, and he has 33 targets. 58% of snaps and 33 targets. He is competing with Austin Ekeler. 33 touches, and 58% of snaps. Ekeler, 48% of snaps and 17. So it looks like it's Brian Robinson Jr.'s backfield. We are going between him, and it is half PPR, or Rachaad White. Now with Rachaad White, I want to check on Bucky Irving early on here. Let's see here. If you guys are just joining, my name is Corey. This is Armchair Fantasy Football, helping you out-research your fantasy opponent in Week 3. Welcome aboard. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. We are streaming 4 to 5 times a week. Bucky Irving has played a more significant role than a lot of us expected, and Rachaad White is extremely inefficient. Now, he does have pass-catching involvement, but I think I'm going to go, especially in half PPR where we care more about those raw yards on the ground, I think I'm going to go Brian Robinson Jr. We just need the Commanders to keep it competitive for a little bit before it doesn't make sense for them to use Brian Robinson Jr. So for Forsyth, that's what I'm going to go with there. All right. Chase Weber's in here saying start 2 full PPR between Deontay Johnson, Jawan Jennings, Michael Pittman Jr., Whittington, and Darnell Mooney. So Mooney had a nice performance not too long ago in prime time. Let's look at Whittington here before I dismiss him any longer. Obviously, the pitch here with Whittington is Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are out. It does have a tough matchup, but I would expect this to be a pass-heavy scheme for the Rams against the Niners team that should overpower them, with them being very injury-prone, with them being very bruised up. In line for key role. See if we got any coach quotes on this. Yeah, I think this is just a hypothetical thing. So seems to be ahead of Tutu Atwell in the pecking order. Might be joining Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson as full-time players. Yeah, he's still competing with that guy, and then Parkinson too. So we've got about 3 different competing interests. I think we're digging pretty deep for Whittington. Mooney is essentially competing with McLeod, London, and Pitts. Mooney looks like the second or tertiary option right now. Johnson with the red rifle back there. And Jawan Jennings has to compete with Ayuk and Kittle. So, we're going to put Whittington out of here. I still think with how wide open that is, it's still a bit of a stretch. He still does have to compete with a variety of guys, and I just don't know how much the Rams are going to be able to move the ball in a very tough matchup against the Niners this week. So that's kind of where I'm sitting there. And then for Jawan Jennings, he still has a decent amount of target competition. Pittman has a tough opponent in the Bears secondary that has looked very strong early on. And, lots of unknowns here. I like Mooney in what should be a high-scoring contest, especially coming off a good performance. He checks off a couple of our boxes, got more opportunity, has been available, has been productive. Opponent strength, I just think it's going to be, in general, a game where I should put game environment as number 5, and I probably will in the future. I think it's going to be a game where the Falcons have to throw a lot. Mahomes is going to dice up every defense in the league. He's going to make the opposing offense have to put up 27, 30 points to compete, usually, right? More times than not. So I think Mooney in a pretty high-scoring contest. And then either Johnson or Pittman. Even though Pittman's got a tough matchup, I think the Bears match up pretty well against the Colts. And Richardson may be working from behind. They're going to try and run the ball early because the Bears have a ridiculous secondary. I'm going to go Mooney and Johnson or Pittman. Jennings and Whittington, due to target competition, are going to be left out. All right, thank you very much for the question, Chase. Richard Ahmad says Gesicki or Zach Ertz. I'm going to lean Gesicki based off of his involvement early on. Let's take a look here. Oh, didn't mean to do that. We are already up to 12 likes on the stream in the first hour. You guys are really picking up steam. I do appreciate it. Welcome to the stream. My name is Corey. This is Armchair Fantasy Football. We are helping you out-research your fantasy opponent. We do live stream 4 to 5 times a week, sometimes more when there is breaking news, such as the CMC news a couple weeks ago. All right. We are answering Richard's question right now between Gesicki and Ertz. Let's see here. Gesicki with 13 targets. He's racked in all but 3 of them for a little over 100 yards. Now, T. Higgins does come back. So that's the pushback there. And then in the same exact game, Zach Ertz, on a team that's likely going to be working from behind, has hauled in 7 of his 8 targets for 90 yards. Ertz with around the same involvement in a more pass-heavy environment, and Higgins is going to be an additional competing factor for Gesicki. We haven't seen how Gesicki does in the same offense as Higgins yet this year. I'm going to say Zach Ertz, actually, based off of all of that. Giovanni says Cam Akers or Chuba Hubbard. We are in a PPR format. I think Akers is in a much friendlier environment on a team that should pull out the win today. They are favored by Vegas. The RB1. Oh my goodness, I can't spell. The RB1 on the Texans against the Vikings, a team that's favored by a couple of points. I think I'm going to go Akers here. Looked efficient in a pretty small sample size. Akers is a weird one, right? Like, when he is the guy, when he is the starting guy, he has looked pretty productive, but then 2023 didn't look good at all in Minnesota. Had a decent amount of pass catching involvement in a very minor role, but he is the guy today, whereas Chuba Hubbard, he's on a team that is likely going to be working from behind as they have the last couple of years. So I'm going to go Cam Akers based off of game environment. I expect the Texans to win. I expect them to chew the clock, so I go with Akers, as opposed to Chuba on a team that's likely going to be throwing it. 3 more likes until we're at 15 on the stream. I would greatly appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. Happy to help you here in week 3. Ray Gamer says, thanks, fam. Enjoy the weekend and good luck, everybody. You as well. You as well. I'm in a subscriber league with 11 of you guys, and so far, so good. We're 2-0. I've got a tough matchup this week, so good luck to all of you guys in that. Jason Hinkle says Evans or DJ Moore. PPR. Evans going up against Denver. I'm worried that the Bucks blow them out, and all of a sudden they go run heavy, and maybe it's a Bucky Irving / Rachaad White, even though he hasn't been very efficient day. Evans is one of the most consistent receivers in the entire league. He always gets the red zone targets. He's up there in snap percentage, kind of getting worked into the season as a 31-year-old out of Texas A&M. I will never stop glazing Mike Evans. This consistency is unmatched. 1,000 yards every single season. So Mike Evans or DJ Moore. I'm going to go back to Underdog in a second to check some more news, as we are just an hour away from kickoff here in week 3. Very excited for it. Moore looked better. Moore consistently gets volume, despite the fact he has volume competition. Target competition, I should say, with Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen when he's back. Gerald Everett didn't look great, so I'm curious, as opposed to, how the expectations were. I'm curious how much they're going to use him in the future. So Evans with 12 targets, and he's still competing, right, with Godwin and Otten. Not much beyond that. I think DJ Moore has more target competition, but Evans is going to have the better matchup. Or excuse me, DJ Moore has more target competition, but will have the better matchup. He's going up against a Colts team that has looked horrible so far. Moore's been getting more volume, and he has the better matchup. I'll dismiss the target competition. So I'm going to go Moore over Evans. Jason, that's a close one. Thanks for jumping in. Trappy Gilmore says Juwan Jennings or Wan'Dale Robinson. So Wan'Dale looking like the secondary weapon behind Malik Neighbors. We'll just go into sleeper here. It's a little quicker than me wasting a few seconds on Google. If I really feel the need to look, I will. But he's the second option. Saw a huge decrease in involvement. He was still on the upper tier when it comes to snap percentage. 63% is not bad. And we are comparing him to Juwan Jennings. I've been misspelling Juwan my whole life. Oh, no, I haven't. Okay. Deep league option going up against the Rams. I expect the Niners to be pretty run heavy. I'm not sure how much room there is for Juwan, at least with Wan'Dale Robinson. They're usually working from behind. They're throwing the ball a decent amount. As we get more and more data in 2024, I'm going to start looking at run pass percentage, but it's so early. I don't want to do too much with that yet. So yeah, I'm going to go with Wan'Dale Robinson in half PPR. Chase and Giovanni saying thank you. No problem. No problem. Anders says Ridley, Dobbins, or Shaheed need a PPR flex. Dobbins has been lighting the world on fire. I am very excited for him. I hope he plays the full season. Ridley, a tough matchup against a really good secondary that includes Isaiah McKinney, who has 2 picks. Xavier McKinney, who has 2 picks, and Jair Alexander, who has a pick of his own. And Shaheed, I really like this matchup. Versatility. He has plenty of big play upside, despite the fact that Derek Carr has only thrown the ball 26 times this year. He has a plethora of points. He's going up against an Eagles team that's allowing 400 yards a game. That's up there with the worst in the league. If it's PPR, I'm usually going to give the receiver the nod over the running back. But with Ridley having such a tough matchup and not being in a great offense, I would take Dobbins over Ridley. So now I'm between Shaheed and Dobbins. And I think I'm going to go Shaheed. Yeah. Shaheed against a horrible defense on an offense that's been humming and hasn't even really thrown the ball a whole lot yet. But when they have, he's been a major part of it. I'm going to go Shaheed. Blurpy's in here. How's it going, Blurpy? We have Keon Coleman, Austin Eckler. You said Coleman, Eckler, Coleman at flex. Oh, Coleman, Eckler, or Juwan Jennings, full PPR. Okay, thank you, sir. So Austin Eckler, as we said a few minutes ago, does not have the major role in that backfield. Brian Robinson Jr. does. So in full PPR, that would usually be a pretty big turnoff for me, except for the fact that Keon Coleman's had a rough start. And Juwan Jennings has kind of just been what you would expect out of the wide receiver 3 on a team. Or Alec Pierce. Okay, that makes things interesting. Because Alec Pierce has had a very nice start to the year. Again, tough matchup against Chicago. We're looking at 10 targets. Juwan Jennings, I just checked, has 9. And Keon Coleman has 6. Was on the field for 91% of snaps and just wasn't used. I'm going to stay away from Coleman until he proves something to us. You know, at some point we need productivity, the right side of the screen here, our fantasy guidelines. We need that to look back on. Pittman and Downs are playing, so Pierce is the tertiary option, again, in a tough matchup against the Bears. I am between Juwan Jennings and Austin Eckler. And Jennings, again, kind of the third option on that offense. An offense that likes to run the ball, is likely going to be ahead against the Rams. It's a tough call. I think Jennings is my favorite and the safest. Eckler is right next to him because he still does have that pass-catching upside, despite the fact he's the secondary option out of the backfield to Brian Robinson Jr. So Eckler or Jennings out of those. Trappy Gilmore says, thank you. One more. We have Bucky Irving or Alexander Madison. No problem. Let's take a look at what we have here. So Irving, we know, has been efficient. I know Madison caught a screen pass and housed it in week 1. What did he do in week 2? Okay, not much. 4 rushes for 1 yard and a touchdown. Okay. Those are deceiving lines, right? I mean, Zamir White's been getting a lot more involvement. I do want to use the target share thing here, or just involvement in offense. Fantasy SP. I'm not endorsing them or anything, but they are an awesome, awesome source to use. Zamir White, honestly dominating. He has 66.7, 2/3, if you will, of the touches out of the backfield. No one's been efficient. That O-line has not looked good. And pass catching upside wise, Madison might have something going there. And then competing with Bucky Irving. Let's see here. I just know Irving has been very efficient, and Rachaad White is around like 2 yards a carry. Irving's snap percentage did go up a little bit. They're not using him a ton. 13 touches. Irving has 16, +2 through the air. We're going to go with the guy who has more involvement and has been more efficient in Bucky Irving. You're not going to get a great score out of him, but I think he's the better decision out of the two. Especially considering that Rachaad White is doing way worse than Bucky Irving. We are 3 likes away from 15 on the stream, folks. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. So for Trappy Gilmore, I am going with Bucky Irving over Madison. He is more efficient, and the guy in front of him, not saying Zamir White's lighting the world on fire, but the guy in front of Bucky Irving and Rachaad White has had a rough start out of the backfield. All right. Nathan Rysor says, traded away Keon Coleman and James Cook for CMC, but I'm 0-2. What are your thoughts? Well, obviously with CMC being down, you kind of got screwed there when it comes to just how things unfolded. I feel bad for you because I think in general, James Cook and Keon Coleman for CMC, as much as I love James Cook, is a good deal. We just got to wait out the injury. If you want to sell off CMC for some more now options, that's fine too. Nathan, feel free to let me know who else is on the lineup. You can give me a full run through and we can kind of look to see if we can make moves. But yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, man. I think that's actually a pretty good deal if CMC just doesn't go down early on and then we're told he's going to play and then all of a sudden we get word that he is out for an extended period of time. Blurpy says Eckler could be in a good game script if they got to throw more against the Bengals. This is true. I'm just curious. Usually when you're throwing more against a team and you're working from behind, how much do you do checkdowns, right? I think Eckler has a better game script than Brian Robinson. That doesn't mean he's going to have a better game, but I think he might be in line for more targets than he usually would. Gail Garvey, I think it's my first time seeing you in here, Gail. Welcome aboard. Says start Shaheed or Jamo, PPR. Jamo going up against the Cardinals. I just want to see how Jamo did in week 2. I know he had an awesome week 1. Just watching that game, actually. Ooh, 20 targets. Now, only 10 receptions. He is the wide receiver 2 behind Amon-Ra. Snap percentage is up. And then Shaheed in a very good matchup against the Eagles. Oh, I'm a big Rashid Shaheed truther. But I think Jamo's got even more big play upside, and I can't ignore the fact that Jamo has double the amount of targets that Shaheed does, despite the fact Shaheed has a nice matchup. I'm going to go Jamo. I feel like opportunity number 2 in our fantasy football guidelines on the right side of the stream. That really reigns supreme. So we're going to go with that. So Gail, I am going Jamo. Trappy Gilmore said, thank you. Good luck on your matchups. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for jumping in. Got a sub from me. Well, thank you very much. We'll be streaming 4 to 5 times a week. So looking forward to having you more on these streams and love the username. And says, do you think CMC will be back week 7 or wait for week 10 since the Niners bye week is week 9? I think once you get in those situations and you have somebody with the injury history of Christian McCaffrey, you're going to wait it out to the bye. Now, it depends, right? Like, let's say we're going into week 7 and the Niners are, I'm just going to make this up, they go on a horrible losing streak and they're 2-4 or they're 3-3. Maybe they bring him back, but if the Niners going into week 7 are 4-2, 5-1, not too worried anymore. So I think it kind of depends on how the team's doing. But as long as the Niners do what they're supposed to do and stay on track for that 10-11 win range, I think that we don't see CMC for, unfortunately, a couple months here. Brandon Anderson, says Jeudy or Najee, full PPR. This is a tough one. Gail said, just got a sub for me. Thank you very much, Gail. I do appreciate it. Stay tuned, new subscribers. We are doing a free jersey giveaway, free NFL jersey giveaway as a thank you to everybody. We just did an Eclipse 1,000 subscribers yesterday morning at like 5 in the morning. Don't ask why I was up at that hour. Just checked my phone and saw it turn from 998 to 1,000. So we are doing a free NFL jersey giveaway in the next week or two. I have a video coming out on that, and then we'll pick the winners live. So stay tuned, everybody. That includes you new subscribers. All right. Let's look over here. So we are back to Brandon Anderson saying Jeudy or Najee, full PPR. Let's take a look, shall we? Jeudy. 14 targets. He's only hauled in 8 of them. We've got Andy in here. What's going on, MA Football Guy? Apologies on the loss on Thursday, but the Jets are looking a little better. Looks like Aaron Rodgers starting to hit his stride again. Allen Lazard playing a bigger factor than I would have anticipated. Jeudy or Najee Harris. Okay. The big thing we need to watch with Najee is just usage. You know, I've been a Najee Harris hater in the past. I don't think he's very efficient. He is supposed to get those tough yards. But you cannot ignore the fact, okay, so we're around 50% for snaps. The issue is, right, the Steelers love to run the ball. That has been their identity since what feels like the beginning of time. So the fact that Najee Harris has 39 touches, and I just want to look at his touch competition out of the backfield. 39 to 15. He is almost tripling up Jaylen Warren. Najee Harris is getting those touches in the red zone. Yeah. As opposed to Jerry Jeudy. The secondary wide receiver in a not great passing offense. That's what worries me. Always does, I feel like. Let's see. And they are going up against the Giants, so we at least have a bit of a weakness there. Jeudy getting utilized a little less, but producing more. So I feel like he should be in line for more work against a weaker defense. And this is PPR, correct? Yeah, PPR. I'm kind of in the same range. Like Judy's wide receiver 33. I would probably rank Najee Harris around that same end in the running back department. And if it's full PPR, we're going to give the nod to the traditional pass catcher. Nathan Reiser says, so my answer is Jeudy there. Hurts, Zach Charbonnet, Kyren, Tyreek, Devonta Smith. Okay, this is the 0-2 team. Laporta, Higgins, and Zamir White at flex. Obviously, CMC is on the IR. So we have Charbonnet filling in for KW9. We have Kyren Williams in a pretty bruised up offense. We just need the Rams to be competitive, and he'll be fine. Kyren Williams, a big winner for me last year. Obviously, the price went up this year. I'd be interested to see how much he gets involved in the pass-catching game with no Cooper Kupp and with no Puka Nacua. But all of a sudden, it's like, how useless is a running back in the third quarter when a team is down a couple possessions? And that very well could happen today. Laporta, you've got one of the best tight ends in the game. Higgins is back. Zamir White is in an interesting spot because he hasn't been very efficient, and he just flat out isn't behind a good offensive line. So maybe we go Zamir White and somebody on the bench, and we try and get maybe Zamir White and one of your bench running backs, and we try and fill in for either Charbonnet or Kyren. Because Kyren's in a bad spot now. Zamir is behind a bad O-line, averaging just 3.1 yards a carry. He has no room. And Charbonnet is a temporary fill-in for Kenneth Walker III. He's not going to be out the entire year. So maybe we even go Charbonnet and, no, because then you're pulling 2 from your starting lineup. Let's go Zamir White and somebody on your bench and try and upgrade for another starting running back who might be in line for a little more carries. Like Tony Pollard's had a nice start so far. Maybe we go with him. The Titans have hung their hat on the run a little more with Will Levis turning the ball over. You know, it's not going to move mountains. We obviously just have to be patient with CMC coming back. Tyreek is in a tough spot because of no Tua. but maybe we go Devontae Smith and somebody on the bench for another upgrade at wide receiver, and then we kind of have like a Tyreek Hill. I don't know if you can pick up Nico Collins coming off a down week. Nathan, the big thing we have to understand, like we're not going to make any deals in the next hour here before kickoff. Let's go capitalize on a good player in a good situation, like a wide receiver in a pass-heavy environment or a running back on a winning team after a bad week. Let's go buy low on somebody. Check in with me in a few streams, and let's kind of see where we're at. But I wouldn't hate taking Zamir and somebody on the bench or Smith and somebody on the bench and upgrading at running back or wide receiver just to kind of fill that hole until we do get CMC back. So, yeah, that's what I'm going with there. All right. And Gail just subbed. Appreciate it so much. We have Blurpy saying Metcalf, Aaron Jones, Neighbors, or Jameson full PPR. I am assuming we're only taking one. In full PPR, I'm typically giving the nod to the receivers unless we have a very interesting situation with a running back who just gets pass catches galore. That's not the situation with Aaron Jones at the moment. He did have a nice week 2 in that regard. So we're between Metcalf, Neighbors, and Jameson. Now, Neighbors is the wide receiver one on a bad football team that is working from behind a lot. Yep, no problem, Nathan. We'll check in a bit. Let's see if we can get any buy low options, Nathan, after the week 3 performances, and then we can go upgrade in one of those spots. So wide receivers or running backs, come back to me. We'll work with you here. So we've got Blurpy saying Metcalf, Jones, Neighbors, or Jameson. I'm taking this wide receiving core over Jones. You know, very unique situation where I would take a running back in this spot, so I'm not going to at this moment. Metcalf, kind of the secondary option last week to Jackson Smith and Jigba. I don't think that'll always be the case. And then Neighbors is on an offense that got 3 touchdowns last week, even though they still lost to the Commanders. Jameson Williams, plenty of pass catching upside, and obviously plenty of pass catching upside. Plenty of targets last week, but going up against a Cardinals team, the total is high. That could end up being an arms race. I'm between Metcalf, Neighbors, and Jameson. I think Metcalf's the safest option. He is the far and away wide receiver one on his team, and the same goes for Neighbors. So I think I'm between those two, even though Jameson Williams did have a lot of targets last week. He's only caught 10 of his 20. He is still that vertical threat, so he's kind of a boomer bust. I think I'm going to go... In that matchup, we'll go Metcalf. Metcalf or Neighbors, though. I really can't blame you for either. Pittman or Keon Coleman in Dynasty. MA football guy. I love 5-year upside, and I know that Keon Coleman's way younger, but I'm still going to go Michael Pittman. We haven't seen anything of note from Keon Coleman yet. Check back with me in a couple weeks, and maybe we got something else. Blurpy says also back to that first question, I could pick up Foreman and play him. Blurpy, let's look at that first question. No, I think the options you presented me with, it was either Juwan Jennings or Eckler we were going with, is better than Foreman at the moment. A big Deontay Foreman guy, but not in this situation. Not given the other options. We're not that deep. Brandon Anderson said, thank you, man. Subbed. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Nathan saying, appreciate you, brother. Well, I appreciate you. And Troy Ordaz says, yo, how do you feel about me starting Jamo and Amon-Ra and Gibbs in the same league? The triple stack is an interesting one, right? So we've got to make sure that these are like the 3 best options. And what worries me with that, Troy, is we still have Sam Laporta, right? We still have David Montgomery poaching touchdowns. And then you have Jamo, Amon-Ra, and Gibbs. I would say you have the 1, the 2/3, and like the 4. You've still got people sneaking in there like Laporta and Montgomery taking away points. So I would maybe sell one off. Jamo's the most inconsistent out of those, although he has had a very good start. Maybe you sell him high, or maybe you sell Gibbs high for another running back. I just have a hard time believing all 3 of those guys are going to consistently have a great week. Guys, I got to run to the bathroom super quick. Just give me like 2 seconds. I will be right back. I'm going to go get some water. Keep piling those questions in the chat. Do not go anywhere. Literally give me like 2 minutes. I'll be right back. All right, folks. Thank you so much for your patience. I appreciate that. We will go back into the chat and answer some more of your questions here. Had to get some much-needed water. So I see 9 of you in the stream. My name is Corey. This is Armchair Fantasy Football. We are gearing you up for Week 3. We are utilizing my 4 kind of key pillars, really, for fantasy football, or 4 fantasy guidelines. We have availability. Are they on the field? We have opportunity, touches, targets, and snaps. We have productivity, yards per carry, high catch percentage, high yards per reception amount, and much more. Quarterbacks, defense, kickers, tight ends, those are pretty clear from there. And opponent strength. We do want to capitalize on good matchups. Let's go back into the comments. Of course, guys, we are at 13 likes. If we could reach 15 by the end of the stream, that would be awesome. Appreciate all of the support as of late. I do stream 4 to 5 times per week. I'm here to always help you out-research your fantasy opponent, put as much information in front of you as possible to make you feel well-equipped. All right. Where was I? Jamo, Amon-Ra, and Gibbs. Yeah, Troy. I would steer clear and trade one of those away because that's a lot on the same offense, and we still have to worry about Laporta. We still have to worry about David Montgomery. Those are kind of household names in 2024 when it comes to overall contributions and touchdowns when it comes to David Montgomery, especially in those goal-to-go situations. So I say we upgrade at a position. We can go Gibbs and a bench piece, or Jamo and a bench piece, and upgrade at wide receiver or running back. Yeah, 1 like away from 15. Thank you guys so much. Keep piling those questions in the chat. Start-sit questions. Long-term upside. Who would you take in Dynasty? Who would you take rest of year? Any upgrades that you should be going for in your lineup? Shoot all those over. I am very happy to help you here on this beautiful Sunday morning. We've got about 30 minutes to kick off. All right. Andy's saying, thanks, Corey. No problem at all. Andy's another day one, man. Talk about the 1,000 subscriber special and how happy I was yesterday to reach that number. Andy's been here since I had like 150 subscribers, so appreciate you. Richard says, in a standard league, we are looking at the flex spot. Pollard, Place, or Robbins? Oh, okay. Olave, or I'm assuming Dobbins. Pollard, not Pollard. Pollard, Olave, or Dobbins in a standard league. We are at 15 likes. Thank you guys so much. Richard, I'm looking at Pollard, somebody who in the long term, I do expect to be competing with Tyjae Spears for when it comes to carries. Let's see. If I'm being honest with you, right, need a flex for this week. Pollard up against Green Bay's front 7. Green Bay has struggled against the run. They let Jonathan Taylor run all over them, even though the Colts allowed Malik Willis and Josh Jacobs to run all over them as well. Pollard is efficient, 4.4 yards per carry, decently involved in the pass-catching department. Dobbins going up against a tough Steelers team. I like Pollard and I like Dobbins, and obviously Dobbins had a better start. In standard, we also care about just production on the ground. I think I am going Pollard here because I do expect him to do relatively well against a Green Bay front 7 that hasn't looked too sharp. Rashawn Gary, who they just paid a ton of money, didn't even have a tackle last week. So, again, he's disrupting. He's opening avenues up for other defensive players, but still. So, I like Pollard over Dobbins. And then if we're looking at Olave against the Eagles. The Eagles allowing 400 yards in total per game through 2 weeks. This is standard. We want yards. And Pollard, I think, has a nice matchup. The Titans are also favored Malik Willis to start this week. So that could be a run-favorable script. I'm going to go Tony Pollard over Olave and Dobbins in a standard league for your flex spot. Nathan Reiser says, different league for this one. Need to start one of these. We are between T. Higgins, Ladd McConkey, and Drake London. T. Higgins coming in to an offense that has utilized Jamar Chase and has utilized Mike Gesicki a decent amount. Drake London going up against the Chiefs in what should be a high-scoring affair. T. Higgins going up against the Commanders. I think I had this ultimatum before, and I was stuck between these two. I love Ladd McConkey, but I'm not as sold on him as I am these other two at times wide receiver ones. Obviously, London, the wide receiver one for his team. Higgins has been a 1,000-yard receiver before, but has to compete with Chase. Higgins coming off the injury. Maybe I go Drake London here. Higgins is going up against a very weak defense, but we need him to be involved early and often, and he does have those red zone catches. I am between Higgins and London. Nathan, I am slightly leaning London because I'm being cautious about the Higgins injury, the hamstring injury he's coming off of. If you are not worried about that, then go for Higgins, I would say, because I think the upside, specifically in a matchup like this, is worth it. All right. Troy says, would you rather start Dowdle or Steele? Carson Steele should be the RB1, unless it's a committee approach. First crack at RB1 role. Curious to see how that goes. Akers also starting. Dowdle against a tough Baltimore team, and he's drawing an unfavorable matchup. He has been splitting with Zeke. He has been relatively efficient and involved in the pass-catching game. I think it just makes sense to go with the conclusive RB1. I know Samaje Perine might get some touches as well. Also, my apologies. I thought he was on the Broncos earlier today. He is not. He is the RB2 now with Pacheco out. I'm going to go with Carson Steele over Rico Dowdle. I think he'll get more involvement here. He's had a decent amount of involvement as the RB2, all things considered, before Pacheco went out. MA Football Guy saying appreciate the shout out. No problem at all, man. Love your channel as well. If any of you are Patriots fans by any regard, make sure that you subscribe to MA Football Guy. He is in the live chat right now. He does daily, definitely weekly. There's a few of them a week that I've seen, like minute to a minute and a half reports of just what's going on, breaking down the game. Very genuine guy. Just good stuff overall, and a good source for your Patriots news. All right. MA Football Guy saying, Iosivas, Dobbs, or Sutton. Probably not Dobbs, considering that Love is still out. Yeah, probably not anybody in that passing game until Love is back, which I think he will be in Week 4. That should be a big early season game against the Vikings to kick off division play in the NFC North. So we are between Sutton and Iosivas. Let's look at Sutton's involvement early on before I do anything, but this should be a pass-heavy scheme. Again, this is a squad that's been working from behind. The question we just have to ask ourselves is Bo Nix utilizing Courtland Sutton? Well, he did in the first week, and not so much in the second week. Touchdown-dependent wide receiver 4. Talk about a fantasy insult for the ages there. As opposed to, we can look at Iosivas, but there's a lot of target competition between Chase, between Higgins, between Gesicki, Chase Brown, and Zach Moss. Relatively involved in the pass-catching game. I don't want to say they're like premier in that category. But yeah, I am probably leaning Courtland Sutton here. Oh, I just realized I had this on and you guys didn't see it. Yeah, I'm going to go Sutton, then Iosivas, then Dobbs. Can't talk right now. Blurpy's saying, go Pats, we suck. Don't worry. I am also a fan of a team that's not doing very good. DRXIIPY, we have Quentin Johnston or Brandon Cooks, PPR. This is an interesting one because Quentin Johnston had a horrible rookie year when you consider the fact that he had a lot of drops, was a first rounder, and had every opportunity to break out in certain points and just didn't. To start off his second year, just coming off a 2-touchdown performance, already averaging about 45 yards per game. You project that over, I know it's a long season, but a 17-game season, and all of a sudden, we're looking at like an 800-yard season, right? 50 times 17, 850. Decent amount of involvement. We're seeing more snaps. We're seeing one more target. We're seeing throws more-ish down the field. And we saw a couple of end zone looks. Now, Brandon Cooks, in a much more pass-heavy offense, a much more established name, but also much more target competition between that of Brandon Cooks and, between that of CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson, hasn't seen a whole lot. He's seen more snaps, but I think Johnston, considering he's competing with Joshua Palmer and not much else right now, I think Quentin Johnston has had a hotter start. He's had more looks. He's younger, too. I like the long-term upside. I think I'm going to go Quentin Johnston against the Steelers, even though it is a tough matchup. Brandon Cooks going up against Baltimore also has a tough matchup, so I'm just going to go off the man with slightly more involvement. I'll take somebody who has 8 receptions on 11 targets over someone who has 6 receptions on 9 targets. More end zone looks, more production. Just younger, and I think is going to attract some more draw in this Harbaugh-led offense. So that is what I'm going to go with there. Let's go back to the underdog tab. I'm sure a lot has changed here, and we'll just review a few things. If you guys are just joining the channel, my name is Corey. This is Armchair Fantasy Football and holy backups. A lot of backup quarterback reports. But we are here to help you out research your fantasy opponent in Week 3 and in 2024. If you could leave a like and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. We are also doing a free NFL jersey giveaway in the next week or two here. I'll be doing a special video thanking all of you for helping me get to 1,000 subscribers, and one of you is going to get a free NFL jersey, probably from Fanatics or a reputable site in general. I'm not going to get you a cheap $25, $30 one. And details will come out on that. We'll probably do a Google form or something, and one of you will get a free NFL jersey for a player of your choice. So thank you guys so much for the support so far. We are live for another 25 minutes here, looking for news of note, and I don't see much of it so far. Devin White for the Eagles, a healthy scratch. He was drafted in 2019. It feels like he's been in the league a lot longer than that. Emergency QB, Zach Wilson. Emergency QB, Spencer Rattler. Now, this is a big one, right? Cam Akers is expected to take an expanded workload because Joe Mixon, the RB1, and Dameon Pierce, the RB2, both out. So something to keep an eye on there. No Roman Wilson. More opportunity for Freiermuth and others. Tyjae Spears active despite fending off an ankle injury. Russ is out for the 3rd straight week with a calf injury. This is going to be something to follow because if the Steelers go 3-0, is Russ really just going to come back and take the job? Or is it one of those where Justin Fields gets to play until he loses it? Could hang on to the job if he's able to guide Pittsburgh to a 3-0 start. I mean, at some point, you got to stop refuting the evidence, right? Velus Jones Jr., a healthy scratch. He has had quite the last couple of years. Lots of fumbles, drops. The Bears have tried to find a place to put him. He was on Hard Knocks, and now he was running out of the backfield. In the new kickoff rule, where somebody is 25, 30 yards away, whatever it is, from the receiver, from the returner, until the returner touches the ball, he still managed to fumble and lose the ball. The ball fell through his hands and booted off his foot. So not much of note there. No Joshua Palmer. I did not see this before. That makes me think even more so that Quentin Johnston should be in line for a decent amount of targets. Now, we do have to keep in mind the Chargers have not thrown the ball a whole lot. This is a brand new offense. Harbaugh is run heavy to say the very least. They both are. Yep, no Jordan Love. Taysom Hill ruled out. I feel like he usually becomes a factor back half of the year. Bryce Young saga is going to be an interesting one to follow. When it comes to fantasy, we shouldn't care too much about it. Raiders defense should be a great play, even with the red rifle back there. Andy Dalton doesn't strike me as someone who is very mobile. And we'll keep looking down here. Not much. Like, obviously, Isaiah Pacheco's out. Christian McCaffrey's out. These are guys who will be out for a prolonged period of time. No George Kittle. But no real big breaking news this morning, which is good. We were kind of all just waiting to see what Jordan Love would do. All right, folks, my name is Corey. This is Armchair Fantasy Football. If you're just jumping in, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. But most importantly, as we help you out-research your fantasy opponent in 2024 and beyond, drop a comment in the live chat. Ask me start-sit questions. Show me the lineup. Let me know if you're pondering any trades. Pitch me a certain situation, if you should pick somebody up off waivers in the next 23 minutes or not, and replace someone with how injury-riddled the NFL is. I wouldn't be shocked about this. In your starting lineup with them. No Evan Ingram. We already know Justin Herbert is playing. And now we're getting back to a couple days ago, so this is all older stuff. For the most part, let's go over and look at totals, and I can kind of just give you guys, as you continue to pile questions in the live chat, I'll make those my priority. I can give you guys an idea of what that means fantasy-wise. So we'll look at totals and Vegas lines for spreads. All right. Steelers-Chargers is supposed to be the lowest scoring game of the week. So, again, when I say I'm leaning more towards Quentin Johnston, keep that in mind. That, yes, he should be the primary receiver with Joshua Palmer out and with Justin Herbert in. But 36 total points and a 2.5-point spread, and the Chargers are underdogs. They're not supposed to sniff 20 points. So just something to keep in mind. It's supposed to be, oh my gosh, that's gross. Like a 19-16 game? Yeah, okay. 19-17 game. Not supposed to be a good one. Colts and Bears, a little higher. We're looking at 43.5 points. Caleb Williams was looking better. He still looks horrible, but it's 2 weeks into an NFL career. Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze all being out there. When they're all healthy, I'm interested to see what happens. And the Colts, obviously, one of the poorer defenses early on in the season. What's the highest total? I believe Cardinals-Lions. Falcons-Chiefs is not the 50+. That's my mistake. Falcons-Chiefs is 46.5. Cardinals-Lions. Now, all of a sudden, we start to look at guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., like Amon-Ra St. Brown, like Jameson Williams, like Sam Laporta, like James Conner, and you're like, okay, there's supposed to be a lot of points scored here. These are two very high-scoring offenses that have lit up the scoreboard early on this season. Would be interested to see what happens when they clash. Mayo is in here saying Tyler Johnson, Quentin Johnston, or Jameson Williams. I'm going to go Jameson Williams in this 51.5-point projected total. The secondary option so far for the Lions. With 20 targets, he's racked in 10 of them and seems to be a down-the-field threat. That leaves us between Quentin Johnston and Tyler Johnson in a debilitated wide receiving core. The Niners, I think, will crush the Rams. That spread in a live capacity is up to 7.5. Now, the Rams will probably be going pass heavy. The question is, even when they're down, if they're down 14, 21 points, how effectively can they move the ball with how debilitated that offense is? I am not sure. So I'm going to go, even though it is the lowest total, I'm going to go Quentin Johnston, the fill-in number one option with Joshua Palmer out in a relatively low-scoring game. And I am going to go Jameson Williams because of the involvement we've seen in a relatively small sample size, but nonetheless, he looks a lot better to start the year. And I'll be honest, I was critical of him because he had played 18 games over the course of 2 seasons, and he was coming in at wide receiver 48, despite the fact he was finishing around 80th last year, and his cumulative total between 2 seasons didn't even equal the total of the wide receiver 48 last year, which I believe was Rashid Shaheed. So I was definitely wrong. If this continues to track 200 receiving yards through 2 weeks and a touchdown, I mean, numbers don't lie. But I'm going to go Quentin Johnston and Jameson Williams for you, Mayo. We've got about 15 minutes before we end the stream, folks. Any other start or sit questions? Any other waiver wire pickup, last-second transactions that you want to make before the main football slate kicks off for week 3 here on a beautiful Sunday afternoon? Just let me know, and we will dive in and do some research for you. Otherwise, I'm going to go back here and continue to kind of just dive into each of these matchups. So obviously, Jets-Patriots already happened. Bengals-Commanders, one of the largest spreads of the week. Actually, at the point that this was submitted on Vegas Insider, it was the largest spread of the week. A high-scoring affair. The Commanders likely going pretty pass-heavy. The Bengals and Zach Moss and Chase Brown, I would expect to get a decent amount of involvement on the ground. Cowboys-Ravens, I'm not sure about that 47.5-point total. I mean, we're looking at 2 very tough defenses. I know the Cowboys just got shelled by the Saints a week ago. Mayo saying, looks good, thank you. No problem. But, I mean, the Cowboys and Ravens both have dudes on both sides. Obviously, Micah Parsons sticking out. Trayvon Diggs. I would be curious. Lamar is 20-1 against the spread, against the NFC. So that's something to keep in mind. I mean, this is essentially a money line game, -1.5. Titans-Packers. Malik Willis is in, meaning Jaden Reed, meaning Romeo Doubs, meaning Tucker Kraft, probably out. I would say stock down on those guys and stock up on Josh Jacobs. I think he is possibly in top 5 running back grounds for this week, even though he got no targets. Not on the injury report, top 12 running back. For a couple of reasons. Malik Willis is back there. It's supposed to be a run-heavy scheme. But also, Emmanuel Wilson's been down. A.J. Dillon is down for the year. It's pretty hard to be optimistic about the passing game and anything other than Josh Jacobs on this Green Bay team unless Malik Willis goes out there, kind of gets the keys to the offense and shocks some people. We are at 17 likes. Thank you guys so much so far. It has been an awesome stream. We'll be on for about 10 to 15 more minutes. My name is Corey. This is Armchair Fantasy Football. If it is your first time here, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and stay tuned because we are doing a free NFL jersey giveaway in about a week or two as a thank you to all of you that have helped me build over 1,000 subscribers on this channel in the last couple of years. Means a lot to me. You guys have given me a great community and lots of victories to celebrate. So I'm going to give one of you your favorite NFL jersey, a legit one, not a $25 one, in the next week or two. So make sure you like and subscribe. Stay tuned for those details. And of course, pay attention to those fantasy football guidelines on the right side of the screen. We have availability. Are they on the field? Opportunity, snaps, touches, and targets. Productivity. We want someone with high yards per carry on the ground. We want a good catch percentage. We want essentially an efficient football player who is earning more and more time on the field. And opponent strength as we get more and more and more data in 2024. We want to capitalize on weak defenses, or if you're streaming defenses, weak offenses. Ones that stick out to me, the Buccaneers, even though they are missing a lot of starters, going up against the Broncos offense. And then defenses to capitalize against. The Commanders have not looked great. They are the last ranked defense on Sleeper and across a couple of other platforms. And then, of course, the Eagles are allowing 400 yards per game. So the Atlanta game kind of showed some of those cracks, even though it ended up being a turnover-ridden end of the ball game where Jalen Hurts kind of threw an arm punt. But the Eagles going into another matchup where I think there's a lot of opportunity for the Saints. You know, I'm not even sure which way that game's going to go, but I expect a lot of scoring. All right. Andy's saying, Iosivas or Reed? Weird question, I know. So Iosivas has more target competition, but with Reed, I mean, we're lucky if Malik Willis throws the ball 20 times today. So I am going to say, I'm actually going to say Jayden Reed because out of all of those pass-catching options on the Packers, he's the most versatile. I wouldn't be shocked if they get him involved on end-arounds, jet sweeps, quick shovel passes. The Packers are not going to be able to run it up the gut against the Titans over and over and over, a week removed from doing it against the Colts. The Titans are an NFL team, too. They've had a full week to prepare, and the Titans are allowing just barely over 200 yards per game. They actually have the best defense in the league from a yards per game allowed perspective. So I think Jayden Reed gets involved as Matt LaFleur tries to get more and more creative in his offensive play calling. Iosivas has T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Mike Gesicki to compete with, as well as Zach Moss and Chase Brown, who have proven to be pass catchers out of the backfield early on. 18 likes, folks. If we can get 2 more, if we can get to 20 before kickoff, that would be awesome. We had well over 30 yesterday. Just phenomenal stuff. I appreciate you guys a ton. Alex Gary is saying, Kittle is out for me. Waiver wire left with Strang or Kmet or Parkinson. Let's look over here. Kmet, plenty of target competition, but it is a Colts defense that has bent and broken early on. Kmet had more upside, but I mean, I would kind of agree with this headline here from Roto Baller. A risky deep league play in week 3. The snap percentage was down in week 1. Let's look over at Strang with Jacksonville. Now, he's interesting because the Jaguars are missing Evan Ingram. Higher snaps, decent amount of targets. And then Parkinson is your other one. Obviously, we are going off the storyline and relying on the fact that Cooper Kupp, he is 6'7". I did not know that. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are out. I am going to go with, goodness, he's been on the field the most. But they're kind of using him as a blocker, and why wouldn't you? He's 6'7", 265, better than someone who's just going to be in there to catch the ball. I think I'm going to go with Strang, slotting in for Evan Ingram. He has seen the most involvement so far. I am sorry to hear that Kittle is out. Hopefully he's back soon for you. Yeah, I think we're going to go with Brenton Strang. That is what I'm thinking. Andy's saying, deal, man. Thank you. No problem. No problem. Looking at our poll here, 42% of you are 2-0. 39% of you are 1-1, and 19% of you are 0-2. So lots of winning records. Good to see. Good to see. We'll hang on here for just a few more minutes if you guys have any last-second questions here. Again, my name is Corey. This is Armchair Fantasy Football. I stream 4 to 5 times a week, and I'm probably one of the only content creators that's going to give you a cheat sheet on the right side of the screen. Availability, opportunity, productivity, and opponent strength. I've been preaching this in one way for another since this channel started in 2022. We need people who are on the field. We need people who are getting chances to perform. We're talking touches, targets, and snaps. You'll see me talk about those metrics a lot on this channel, especially when you ask me any questions. That's kind of how I determine tiebreakers. Productivity, we want people who are going to be performing with these opportunities, high yards per carry. We want guys who are very efficient, especially when they're in a competition in the backfield or they're in a spread out attack where there's a lot of weapons on a team. Think about like the Texans or the Bears, right? We've got multiple Pro Bowlers on that team, multiple phenomenal pass catchers when you've got like Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz and Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs, and with the Bears, a 6-time Pro Bowler in Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and of course Rome Odunze, the number 9 overall pick this year. And then opponent strength. We want to make sure we're capitalizing against weaker defenses like the Commanders, who are dead last in fantasy rankings, and the Eagles, who are allowing 400 plus per week through 2 weeks. And yeah, they've got a fun matchup against the Saints. Mayo saying Baker or Caleb Williams. I'm going Baker. I think Caleb Williams has a very nice matchup against the Colts. Caleb Williams has his weapons. Caleb Williams looked a lot better in week 2. However, Baker Mayfield has been QB1 so far, and he's going up against a Broncos team that has been shredded time and time again. Kyle Singer is in here. Kyle, I think you're new. Welcome to the channel. Let's see. Trevor Lawrence or Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins coming off kind of a bounce-back performance. Looked a little bit better in week 2. Primetime Kirk, we got to keep that in mind. 20 for 29 with a couple of touchdowns, no turnovers, nearly threw for 250, going up against Kansas City. And I believe we're looking at a 46.5 point total. Just kind of trying to get an idea of the landscape of, okay, how many points is this team supposed to score? They're projecting around 21, 22 points. And then you were bringing up Trevor Lawrence against the Bills. Lawrence has struggled early on, and I believe that is around the same total. Yeah, it's actually 1 point less. So around the same total. The Jaguars are underdogs, so they should go pass heavy, but so are the Chiefs by a field goal in Kansas City. 1 like away from 20 on the stream, folks. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Lots of support the last couple days here. Both are likely going to be in a pass-heavy scheme when you look at the game script. Jags are expected to be working from behind, as are the Falcons. We have seen better performance so far from Kirk Cousins. Trevor Lawrence has been a frustrating play. 14 for 30. I know it's Cleveland. Had 1 rush broken free. He's been sacked 7 times. A rough start for him. I'm just going to go off of straight-up productivity because their game scripts are the same. They're both in 46.5 to 45.5 total point projections from Vegas. They're both underdogs, so they should go throw heavy, or at least be in competitive ball games to do that. I'm just going to go off productivity. All right. Kyle saying definitely new. Well, Kyle, I'm doing a free NFL jersey giveaway in the next week or two here as a huge thank you to everybody for helping me build up to 1,000 subscribers. So keep that in mind. Make sure you hit that like button as you did and subscribe and stick around as we help you out research your fantasy opponent in 2024 and flat out just give away a jersey. That's a pretty cool opportunity for you guys. I'm excited to do that. Alex Garay is saying for my flex, we've got Dobbins, Charbonnet, or Robinson Jr. So Charbonnet filling in as that RB1 option. Let's look over here. Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate it, man. Dobbins in a low-scoring matchup. 36 is the total against the Steelers. Chargers are underdogs as well. Charbonnet taking over for Kenneth Walker III. We've had a lot of running back injuries early on, it feels like, at least key ones. CMC, of course. Isaiah Pacheco, who I was very high on, an RB1 and a winning football team. And then Kenneth Walker III had a couple nice years early on in his career. So we're looking at somebody with a decent amount of pass catching involvement in Charbonnet going up against Miami. The Steelers are favored, so that's a favorable run script for, I should say favorable run-heavy script for Charbonnet and the Seahawks, likely working ahead in the second half. Dobbins in a lower scoring game, and then Brian Robinson Jr. likely going to be working from behind, and Austin Eckler takes those dump-off passes, if you will, away from Robinson Jr. That's more Eckler's profile. Robinson Jr. has been more of the in-between the tackles guy. So I don't like the fact that Robinson Jr. is on a team that is favored, or excuse me, that is a huge underdog, meaning they'll probably have to go pass heavy, and that's not really his thing. So now we're between Charbonnet, who is on a team that's favored by almost a touchdown against a bruised-up Dolphins team that is missing Tua Tagovailoa. Maybe they rely a little bit more on the run. I don't know. But I do expect the Seahawks to win that one. And as a result, run the ball down the stretch. And then J.K. Dobbins going up against the Steelers. It's nearly a coin flip of a game. The Chargers are a field goal underdog. I think I'm going to go Charbonnet. I feel pretty confident that the Steelers or the Seahawks win that game against the Dolphins. Yeah. And we have a decent amount of pass catching involvement, right? 5 receptions out of all 5 targets. 60 yards through the air. In line for another big workload. Projection is as high as it's going to be this year probably against a Miami squad that looks bruised up. Doesn't look strong at all. I'm feeling good about that. All right. We've got Jacob Ander in here. Says good morning. Well, good to see you, Jacob. 2 questions. All right. So we've got Dak or Jaden Daniels. We'll look at that here. Jaden Daniels going up against the Bengals and working from behind. And then Chuba or Demarcus Robinson. PPR right away, I'm going to go Demarcus Robinson because not much target competition. I do expect the Rams to work from behind, so they should go pass heavy. And Demarcus Robinson has been utilized a decent amount considering his role in this offense. Now that Kupp and Puka are out, I like that a lot as opposed to Chuba. A running back on a team that's projected to lose this game by a touchdown, they'll probably go pass heavy. So I like Demarcus. Between Dak and Jaden Daniels, obviously Jaden Daniels has more rushing upside. Dak Prescott, a very tough matchup against Baltimore this week. Jaden Daniels rushing upside going up against the Bengals. Because of how much he has tucked it and ran, I think I'm going to go Jaden Daniels. I just want to see really quick how the Bengals have done through the first couple of weeks. 18 points a game allowed. They've forced a few turnovers. Oh, that's a tough one. You know what? High total, too, for this Cowboys and Ravens game, 47.5. Bengals and Commanders is 47, too. I think we go Jaden Daniels working from behind and having more rushing upside. It's not by much, but I think we go with that. All right, Jacob, so I'm going Jaden Daniels over Dak with the rushing upside and the fact that it'll probably be a pass-heavy scheme as well with them working from behind. And Demarcus Robinson in a PPR format because he is a traditional pass catcher. He does not have a ton of target competition. And Chuba Hubbard is a running back on a bad football team that's probably going to also rely on the pass today. And Alex Gary is saying, all right, that's who I locked in already. Thank you. Let's see who we had, Alex. Okay, I like it. Yeah, Charbonnet I think I like there. With the potential game script. iTricks, I'm sorry I skipped you there, says flex Jerome Ford or Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's got a pretty tough matchup against the Packers secondary. Forced a handful of turnovers early on. That should be an ugly game. I'm going to go Jerome Ford in a game that the Browns should step out and win. Obviously, he is still taking over for Chubb. Low-scoring game against a Giants team that, yes, did invest in Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns, but I do expect the Browns to step out and win this one. And as a result, they run the ball down the stretch. We have a few more in here. Mikey 5.8. Goff or Richardson's and Neighbors or Cook. Ooh, okay. Goff or Richardson. Richardson against the Bears defense with how much he's turned it over, I don't love. Goff in a very high-scoring game. 51.5, supposed to be the highest scoring yet, and they're at home. I like Jared Goff in his own environment. And then Neighbors or Cook. Neighbors, the wide receiver, one in a losing football team who's been getting a lot of targets, or Cook coming off the 3-touchdown game. I love James Cook, but you can't ignore the volume that Malik Neighbors has been seeing and the situation he's in where it looks like they're starting to connect with him and they're still a team that sucks. So they're going to be working from behind. So I'm going to go Goff and Neighbors over Richardson and Cook. Mega Brick says full PPR. We're starting Zamir White or Carson Steele. Probably Zamir White because this is another team. I mean, they're both favored. But Zamir White on a Raiders squad that is favored over the Panthers. And hopefully they are able to move that line. The Panthers are pretty poor overall. I think that's a good spot for him. Carson Steele, we haven't seen him get a full workload yet. Zamir White, we've seen flashes. Full PPR start Schultz or Strang. We're going to go Dalton Schultz in a passing offense that looks a little bit better. I know Strang is filling in for Evan Ingram, but Schultz has had a lot of involvement since he has shown up in Houston last year. Mega Brick also says full PPR start 2. We are between Naylor, Judy, London, and Pittman. Pittman is a tough matchup. London's in a high-scoring matchup coming off more involvement in week 2. I think he's relatively involved. Between Naylor, Judy, and Pittman, let's look at those super quick. Thank you guys so much for joining the stream today. It has been a lot of fun. Of course, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. We have Naylor. Decent amount of involvement. Pittman, Judy. I think Judy has 14 targets, I want to say. Yes. Up against the Giants, who don't have a great secondary early on. Mega Brick, I'm going to go with London and Judy or Pittman. I'm leaning London and Judy because Pittman has a tough matchup, although Pittman has had more targets as of late. All right, folks, we're going to close the stream out at that. Thank you so much. 19 likes, over 120 of you watching today. Thank you so much for the recent support. Again, my name is Corey. This is Armchair Fantasy Football. We are here to help you out-research your fantasy opponent using that cheat sheet on the right. Availability, are they on the field? Opportunity, snaps, touches, and targets. Productivity, are they efficient? We're looking at high yards per carry rates. We are looking at high catch percentages, high yards per reception rates. Quarterbacks, defenses, kickers, they tell them for you, right? You look in your fantasy app and see who is producing. And again, not much competition there in most regards. And opponent strength, we're getting more and more data. I'm very excited to have 3 weeks under our belt so we can really start to see who the weak link defenses in the NFL are that we can capitalize on. Game environment's important too. We like running backs on winning teams, chew the clock, and we like wide receivers in good offenses on teams that are working from behind so they can get more garbage time touches. It is noon. Thank you guys so much for the support. Jersey giveaway coming up. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe for that. We will keep you posted. Have a wonderful week 3.